Welcome to another episode of Social PR Secrets. My name is Lisa Beyer, and I'll be your host. Today's guest is Nicole Balistreri. Nicole and I go way back. She was actually one of my original employees when I first started my agency, the Beyer Group. And it was back in the day when social media was just coming on the scene and SEO was being integrated with public relations. In today's episode, Nicole and I talk about influencer marketing and more, and how influencer marketing and public relations go hand in hand. So, please welcome Nicole Balistreri. Today I have my special guest, Nicole Balistreri. Hey, Nicole.
Hi, how are you?
Good. So today we are talking about influencer marketing for public relations. And each week we've kind of been building with this group, this influencer mastermind group, to talk about the different ways to use public relations. So we start out kind of with the basics, media pitching. We're help nurturing the group get from point A to a topic idea and actually then pitch the journalist and media coverage, or also look for guest posts. So we've been focusing on different things like writing and also how to get invited to speak at a conference. But I thought today, talking about influencer marketing for public relations and having a discussion about that and how we can apply that to agency owners and how they step into the power of influencer marketing. So Nicole, let's just talk about like influencer marketing in general, like the past, the present, and the future. So who were the influencers like 10 years ago before this?
Right, that's such an interesting question. So, I think when we look at what influencer marketing was, 2008, 2009, we called that like blogger outreach or blogger relations. And that was really reaching out to people that were running blogs and writing long form content. And were really subject matter experts in some key areas. That was really influencer marketing, or what we would have thought of then, because it was much more of a traditional PR landscape. There was online, avenues kind of coming on board. But when we were talking about, who were those online influencers, that would just mostly have been bloggers. And then kind of as the social channels kind of came to maturity and, Facebook really kind of came into its own, and we started to have different channels developing, Instagram, so on and so forth, we saw different influencer groups kind of mature. So you started to see, influencer groups focused on, like the mommies or fashion or beauty, business, technology. They kind of started to self-form into these groups. And, there were definitely people that were more influential within those groups and, kind of continued to climb. And some of them became what we would consider full-on publishers, like Mashable, that started out as, isn't it his name, Pete, right? Pete?
Yeah.
I believe Pete just started out, as like a kind of like a tech blogger influencer. And then that became a full-on kind of like media machine.
Yeah.
And so then, we kind of, fast forward into, like, I would say the last 3 to 4 years, and we're looking more at, kind of making everyone into an influencer, so to speak, right? Within small, like micro groups. But then we start to see like the business of influence really take off, right? So brand partnerships and, influencers kind of replacing traditional media figures, right? So we have influencers as kind of the new media, they're really amateur journalists, if you will. So we kind of see this progression. And I think that kind of brings us to today, where I think, I feel like to a certain extent, a lot of people have micro influence through social and whatever with their own groups. But then when we look at, in terms of PR and media, you do have people that are, writing bylines and working for publications and things like that. But a lot of them also are very active through the social space, and, they carry a lot of influence online. And then you have people that never, write an article for a publication, but they're considered like the authority in their space: fashion, beauty, business, entrepreneurship, whatever. So that's kind of how I see it.
Yeah. And I think I love like a couple of things that you said. One, you just remembering Mashable and when they first came out, and like literally Pete Cashmere, I think that's his name.
Yeah, that is his, and I feel so bad that I didn't remember that, but
I was like, we were obsessed with him. He was so cute. And he I think his story was he started out in his parents' house in the bedroom, like blogging from, Mashable.com. And, all of a sudden it turns into this big, like mega online publication that
True.
to be like the first and only source of social media.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I think like in, the way I see it, like the first influencers were really, from a public relations standpoint, it's the media. It was,
Yeah.
that we're trying to influence the media to write about our brand or write about our
Yeah.
we're doing, and so that we could reach a larger audience, and that the media, the journalists, the reporters, they're all the gatekeepers. We're the gatekeepers, and now we have this abundance of opportunity. We can be our own brand journalists. We can reach out to influencers. We can be an influencer, and the opportunity for for public relations is just unbelievable compared to what it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So there's so much opportunity. I think it's just a matter of like, okay, taking the time, dedicating. If you're an agency owner, say, okay, I'm going to, dedicate X amount, maybe it's 15 minutes a day to work on your agency's public relations, or work on getting that media outreach, or work on submitting for an award. So looking at it from the aspect of influencer marketing, let's kind of talk about why an agency owner should do influencer marketing as part of their public relations strategy.
Sure. So, in my opinion, I think as an owner of a business, and specifically an agency where you're dealing in things that are very now, you want to first of all be seen as that thought leader in your space, right? So we know that, some agencies kind of have a general book of business. We know that there's a lot of agencies out there that specialize in specific verticals, be that healthcare or local business or fashion or beauty or whatever and what have you. You want to have that kind of thought leadership. You want to be that thought leader, so that the businesses that require your services really think of you that way and will come to you for that. And you yourself then also want to elevate kind of beyond the business owner, right? Like you would like to be, seen as somebody that's driving trends, forecasting, things, and really leading your business area. So I think part of the way you can do that, in addition to working with the media and having them, provide you with coverage for various events and things, product launches, is, really tapping into kind of who would that influencer base be for you? Because when the influencer lends you credibility, that's huge, right? So let's say you are that, fashion agency, you have a lot of fashion beauty type clients. Well, if you are working with some of those key influencers on Instagram or on Twitter or whatever, you're really elevating the perception of you as an individual and of the services that your agency provides.
I guess there's actually two ways to look at it as an agency owner. You can either tap into influencer marketing and find influencers, or you can work on being the influencer. So
yes, and that's a really good point. And I have a really good example for that, working on being the influencer. So I won't call him out by name, but I know a very successful business owner in the apparel space. He's a very good friend of mine, and he and I have had an ongoing relationship for many years, and he really has a lot of great knowledge and insight, not only about developing apparel and the apparel business, forecasting trends, but just also entrepreneurship. He's very wise, he's very kind, he's a great mentor, and he really wants to grow himself into that, becoming an influencer space. And so we've worked together quite a bit over the years just on how to do that, and growing his content footprint and helping, grow his audience to position him as that influencer. And, I was really pleased to see that, it's really starting to, pick up for him, and it's working. It's helping him gain coverage for his business and the projects that they're doing in their expansions.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I just want to also say, if you're watching this live, great, welcome. Let us know in the comments any questions that you might have for Nicole and I about influencer marketing for public relations, or just any type of public relations question, or just any question that you might have. We'll try to answer. And if you're watching the recording, go ahead and do the same thing. Put your questions in the comments, and I'll circle back and answer them as best as I can. If you have a situation and you want to tell us about your agency and ask us an opinion about something you're trying to do with an influencer program, feel free to plug that into the comments, and we'll answer them. So
yeah.
Well, just kind of going back to, as an agency owner, you can be an influencer, or you could try to attract influencers.
Yes.
So I'm just kind of thinking, in my head, different things that I've done as an agency owner that gave me a little bit more clout or influence. That one of them is I wrote a book, Social PR Secrets, and so writing a book or writing some sort of an ebook to give yourself some, authority in a space that you want to have influence on.
Mm-hmm.
Mine is the combination of social and PR is how I'm kind of, getting out of just the PR box.
Yeah.
You're an agency owner, and let's say you're specializing in, in sports marketing or, in some sort of like athletics and lifestyle, then maybe looking at giving yourself a little bit of authority by writing a book or writing an ebook that's on that, just on that niche, so that you then, a source of influence, a source of authority.
Yeah, and and that just goes back to content creation. A lot of people will ask me just, well, kind of where do I start? And it's really what you said. Well, you need to create the content that's going to make you the authority and the thought leader, whether that's a book, whether that's you'd like to start writing every day, blogging, whether you want to make videos, like Gary Vee, whatever. So, just coming up with the different ways that work for you and kind of your area of expertise, and just staying consistent with that content creation and working on growing your audience through a variety of methods.
Yeah, and I think, one other example as an agency owner that would help build that that content creation, and Gary Vee is an example who did this very well. He's not my style, but he did do it very well. Is just documenting and just being like super authentic. Kat does a great job of documenting and coming on and just being super authentic and, just being herself. So just being yourself and letting people kind of get behind the scenes of your pain points and, your just who you really are as an agency owner, I think is super important.
Absolutely. And I think that not only helps position you as the thought leader, helps elevate your business. It really can meet a variety of goals, right? Whether that's attracting clients, attracting speaking, attracting, opportunities to be featured in articles or on TV or whatever. It kind of can serve all those purposes.
Yeah. And I think also it's easy to get into this mode of overthinking something and analysis paralysis and like, no, that's not good enough, or no, I have to find something better, or I have to perfect, and it's just, if you, I'm just thinking of myself too. Like I haven't posted on my Instagram in like 2 weeks, and it's because I'm like, I don't know, I'm just like at this like, wait, what should I do? I need to do something great. And you just have something naturally, like I need to like, take my advice. And I think that a lot of people do that with a lot of things. They just, they're like in this like stop frozen zone,
Yeah, you just have to start. I tell people that all the time, just start. It doesn't matter. And you'll look back on things that maybe you've written or posted or filmed, a year or two or whatever ago, and you'll be like, ooh. But then, but what you were doing is you're building, that case for yourself as the influencer, you as the thought leader, your business as the, partner that people should be working with. So you just got to start.
Yeah, definitely. So let's just talk about, we talked about like the why a little bit, getting into the how. So how, we talked a little bit of the how if you're trying to be the influencer, but let's just say you're an agency owner in San Diego. What are some things that you can do to find influencers in your area and use some influencer marketing for publicity?
Sure. So I would first say, and I would say this to anyone, first understand what your goal is with that influencer marketing. So are you looking to, drive business? Are you looking to just, receive coverage with, as you as the business owner and thought leader in your local area? Really kind of sit down and think about what you're looking for out of that relationship kind of before you start anything. And then I would look at kind of what can you provide to the influencer, what type of experience, information, and so on, that's going to give them something to cover. So it could be an event that you have at your business. Maybe you bring together, maybe you're a female business owner in San Diego and you cater exclusively to local businesses, medium size, but you really want to receive that coverage as that female executive because that's an awesome thing, number one. And number two, it's going to help drive your business. Maybe you bring together other female business leaders, in your area, you have a great event, you reach out and invite some, key influencers from your local area to attend as well. Maybe you invite women, area influencers, and kind of how you might find those. I'm always going to advocate for kind of the old school approach of just, getting out there and start looking at the content. Do you have any local San Diego area business owners that are blogging, any moms, that have like a really beautiful lifestyle, high-end kind of, Instagram that are really well followed? Do you have anybody that's doing local events, on Twitter and just tweeting about stuff that's going on locally, and just kind of compile that group and say, okay, here's who I want to invite, and then just go for it. Now, if you're not necessarily maybe having an event, but you have something that you want to share, you've written a book, you're launching a new website, you have done a kind of behind the scenes at my agency type series, those are also like pitch opportunities, right? You can reach out to them and say, hey, look, I know that you're local here in San Diego, and you do a lot of coverage of local businesses. I'm the only female agency owner in San Diego, and I just did this great book about my experience, and I would just love to share it with you if you're interested. You know what I mean? So it's kind of that hybrid between PR pitching, but then also creating like a content, something for them to talk about.
Yeah, and sometimes, you'll be surprised it's somebody that, might be like right in your same building or right next door or right down the street, and, just looking at, okay, who, maybe it's the local chamber, maybe it's, your local entrepreneur group. There's, different ways that you can integrate and identify, who are the influencers in your backyard or who are the influencers in your industry.
Yeah, and just take a look at who's putting out great content locally, right? And that you want to be a part of that. And it might take a little bit of time or legwork to kind of identify those people. You may have to, get on Instagram and start looking up, different people's accounts. You may need to get on LinkedIn and see kind of what everybody's doing. But, at the end of the day, it'll kind of give you those connections, and you'll be able to reach out to the right people that, can be featuring you and your business.
Yeah, definitely. And that's not also, to be said that the journalists really are still influencers, so they should stay on your list of influencers, but now that list has expanded to different categories. And, influencer marketing in a way is the new media. It's the new media outreach.
Yeah, definitely. And, and absolutely, journalists are not to be discounted in any fashion. If anything, I actually think most of them have expanded influence because many of them are super active online as well, in addition to creating content for the publications or platforms that they work for. So, they're kind of playing two roles.
Definitely. So the people upstairs are playing drums. I don't know if anybody could hear it, but just that's our little bit of background music happening. Yeah. So, and then as far as, I said, like, they could be like right outside your door in your same office building, but they could also be right here on Facebook.
Yeah.
Maybe in a group that you're part of, or maybe joining groups and finding out, if you can find some influential admins of Facebook groups that you're a good mix with, that you can join and contribute. And, you don't even have to, you can do it straight from your computer. You don't even have to really, do anything, physically leaving to go anywhere. You could.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing is, get familiar. So if you're that female business owner, get familiar with who in your area is writing about entrepreneurship, women in business, talking about local, women that are like movers and shakers. Like, really get familiar with who's creating the content that you want to be a part of. If it's broader and more general, if it's that, athletics and sports marketing, well, who's really, doing a lot of great coverage of that today? Really make sure that you're understanding their content, what they're talking about, so that you can create things or opportunities to be a part of that.
Yes, definitely. So what could we share with the members here today, the agency owners, that are some actionable takeaways that they can just, right when they're done watching this, they can just sit down and sit at their desk, sit at their computer, and just, what are a couple of things that they can do to get started with influencer marketing?
Sure. So first, I think we kind of mentioned these, but we'll just say first, sit down and figure out what the goals are. So really understand that, is your goal to become a thought leader in sports marketing and be able to talk about trends and what different things are happening in sports marketing, or is your goal to drive business? What is the goal? Number two, identify the people that are creating content that's going to help you facilitate your goal. So if your goal is to be a recognized female entrepreneur agency owner, who's creating that type of content? Is it, is it a blogger? Is it somebody on YouTube? Is it a, online only news publication? Who's creating that content? So kind of make that list and understand, okay, well, these are the people online, through social or online publishing platforms that are creating content that I want to be a part of, or who I want to talk about me and my business. and really make that list. And then I would think about opportunities or content or things that you can give them that are going to make them want to create content about you. So inviting them to an event that's really beautiful that they're going to want to, do Snapchat about, or they're going to want to do Insta stories about or write about, creating that book or that, video series or whatever that you can share with them or ask them to be a part of. You know what I mean? So kind of figuring out those opportunities where you can overlap, suggesting that reaching out and saying, hey, I'd love to come online with you here and do like a little interview. I just did this book. Would you like to talk about it? I see that you cover a lot of this on Twitter. I thought it might be cool for you. So just really kind of taking those 3 steps. So what's the goal? Who's the group? And what are you gonna, do with them? And really outlining that, and then just like get started. Just get started.
So we get emails and requests all the time from clients that are like, oh, should we use this tool for influencer marketing? And does this work for influencer marketing? And should we also, another question we get is, well, why don't we just go for the accounts that have the blue verified check? So first, we'll start with the tools. Is there a magic tool that will help make this influencer marketing program like just make you instantly famous?
No, unfortunately not. And, I think a lot of tools are great and they all serve purposes and they have different, things that they can help you with. Almost every social publishing tool today has ways that you can kind of like track influencers and like determine who's like your best influencers. And there's other separate tools that do that. What they're basically looking at is they're looking at reach, they're looking at engagement, and they're just looking at consistency in some form or another. What they're not really looking at, and even if they tell you they're looking at it, I don't really believe that they are, they're not really looking at the content itself. Like they may have AI that can like examine the content or whatever, but as an individual, they're not really matching that content to you in a very specific way or coming up with those hooks or ways to include you and work with the influencer. So that's kind of where they fall off. And that's where nothing is really going to be a substitute for just kind of doing that good old fashioned getting your hands dirty. But the tools can help you get started, sometimes. And I think a lot of tools also miss out on the micro influencers. So there may be somebody for that San Diego business owner, there may be somebody that only has 1,000 Instagram followers, but she's at every local event and she's doing Insta stories and taking great photos and she's kind of chronicling what's happening around your area. Well, she might not come up in a tool because she's micro, right? But you still might really want to work with her because that might really work for you. You know what I mean? So I think that's important to remember about tools.
Definitely. And then the blue check, the verification, how important is that?
For me, so there's different tiers of influence and like, it's kind of like a funnel. So at the top, it's people with really broad reach. Like those are like the blue check marks, the people that can reach a lot of people. And then it just kind of gets a little bit more narrow, but the closer you get to the bottom, the more engaged and ready to take action those people are. So you kind of want to find somewhere in the middle. So, I mean, I don't think you shouldn't try to work with a blue check mark, but I don't think you need to. You need to find the people that are going to be best for you and are going to help drive your goal forward.
Yeah, definitely. So don't be obsessed with the blue check mark.
No.
Yeah, great advice. So if anybody is watching live and you have any questions, if you are trying to put together your own influencer marketing for PR program for your agency, or just have a question on what to do next, what the first step would be, go ahead and put the question in the comments. We have a couple more minutes. We're going to hang out and just finish talking about the power of influencer marketing for PR. And maybe Nicole, you can just share some examples of programs that we've worked on or you've worked on that have done really well. Like maybe just an example of like an idea that works well with different brands other than an agency.
Yeah, so I've been doing a lot of influencer marketing. I mean, I've been doing influencer marketing since probably about 2010. And I find, one of the ways to kind of make it as successful as possible is to get really specific, like I mentioned, on the goal, whether you're an agency owner, a brand, you have a product launch, whatever, and the ask. And really making sure that you're choosing the right cast of influencers that can help you fulfill that. And so, I mean, I've been doing them for such a long time. I have done, so I recently last winter did one, and it was it was not a, like a super sexy product, but it was like a home related product. And, you know, working with moms, you know, the mom audience is awesome. You know, the mom influencers are great, and really working with them to kind of distill down a complicated topic into really actionable consumer facing talking points, and having them really work their network to help distribute that was great. You know, we had massive sales, you know, increases during that period of time. You know, year over year, we had a ton of great engagement. We had great website traffic, and I really attribute that to finding the right content partners and really being specific with what I needed from them, and really helping, like, working with them, you know, through that process.
So I love that example, because my next question was going to be about, you know, how do we measure? How do we know when it's working? So just some examples that you pointed out that, you know, you can look at your referring website traffic. You can just look at your natural search traffic, because when people are doing branded searches, that can help influence your SEO. Also your level of engagement, branding, your sentiment. So these are all ways that, you know, how do we measure? So those are, you know, the obvious ways to measure, and just making sure that you're tracking, you know, who's mentioning you, and tracking your brand, and using, you know, different tools. This wouldn't be so much for influencer marketing per se, but it's like it's like a, you know, like a secondary. So we use things like Google Analytics or Brand24, things that are monitoring your brand mentions, or monitoring, you know, when you get tagged in different things.
So, yeah, and you know, in terms of how so when, in a lot of, sometimes people will ask me, well, like, how do you know if that's like, if the influencer did a good job? Well, first of all, you know, it's all these things you mentioned in terms of your own metrics that you can track. But I actually typically will ask influencers to provide me back specific metrics, and I can actually kind of tell who, you know, kind of how they rank, and if it was successful or not. And, you know, again, that can be subjective, because you're kind of comparing them to each other, and they may have different audiences, but you can kind of tell, you know, over time how people are doing.
Sure. And so, you know, also, I just want to point out, a lot of the agency owners in this group mostly focus on paid, which is awesome. And, you know, paid is also kind of like the new PR, because it can definitely help with exposure. But the advice I always give when it comes to public relations, and this applies, I believe, also to influencer marketing, is, okay, so how long should you do this for? So my answer to that is, you know, it should be an ongoing, continuous campaign. Maybe one campaign evolves into the next. Like public relations, it's not like, oh, we're going to start this ad on Monday, and we're going to test it out for a week, and then we're going to test it against something else next week. It's not the same, you know, type of, you know, ballpark where you can really do that when it comes to PR and also influencer marketing. It's something that's like, it feeds off, one thing leads to another, and there's momentum.
Yeah, and you know, and there's a lot of, and you want it to be continuous, right? And you know, I like that you mentioned paid as well, because paid layers really well with influencer marketing, because you're gonna have influencers that have tremendous reach, but you are layering in being able to use their content into your paid program and further, like, amplify that. There's a lot of tools out there that will kind of allow for, like, different white labeling and stuff, and that's a very complicated topic, but they work well together, they play well together, they should go together, you know, even insofar as featuring influencer content on, you know, landing pages that you're driving paid traffic to. So they, like, one hand washes the other.
Yeah, that's great. So we have one question here. Let's see if I can put it up. It says, what kind of engagement rate should we look for when considering an influencer marketing for a marketing campaign? When considering an influencer for a marketing campaign?
So that is a really good question. So first I would ask you, what is your standard content engagement rate with your ongoing social content? And I would probably start with that as a benchmark. And then I would look for them to be able to provide you some impression and engagement metrics so that you can calculate an engagement rate and kind of compare it to your benchmark. But I also would say, not to get too caught up in, like, they have to have a 5% engagement rate or I can't work with them. I would always say, look for the people that are going to create the right content and are going to access the right audience for you first. So that's kind of how I would answer that. Yeah,
that's great. And it also made me remember just a very good point. I mean, we're doing this every day, so we kind of just like, oh, this is just like, everybody knows this. But, you know, from one of the outcomes that will happen from either public relations or influencer marketing for PR is the content that you're going to then have to use and repurpose.
Yes.
You kind of touched on this, but I want to just like re-emphasize it.
Yeah.
Ad campaigns, for marketing campaigns, for your website,
Yeah.
and this is all, basically like clippings that you can then take and get validate, use as
Absolutely.
third-party credibility that you can't buy in any type of, ad that wouldn't have that content.
100%, absolutely, and you should be doing that. If you're paying for influencer, partnerships, and you're working with, influencers on the long term, you should absolutely be repurposing the content that they're creating, and that should be built into any agreement that you do.
Definitely. Well, Nicole, you have been a great source and a great guest. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your wisdom when it comes to influencer marketing for PR. And
thank you. I really appreciate it, and I really enjoyed it. And yeah, it's always fun to chat about. So maybe we could do it again sometime.
Yeah, definitely. And just a little bit of background. So Nicole and I have actually known each other for 12 years. We worked,
long time.
Yeah, at the Buyer Group 12 years ago, and now Nicole is back, and we're working together on all kinds of campaigns. So it's really fun to be together again and work together. So if anybody has any questions about PR, influencer marketing for PR, thank you. And just go ahead and put them in the comments, and we'll circle back.
Thank you.
Bye. Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Social PR Secrets. If you like what you heard, check out the book on Amazon or follow our blog at socialprsecrets.com. This episode was sponsored by the Buyer Group, a social PR agency striving to keep our balance in the digital world, practicing public relations, social media, and search marketing, while occasionally drinking a glass of wine or two for the best creativity and results. Thank you all for tuning in. If you would like to get a free chapter of Social PR Secrets, go to socialprsecrets.com/free.